Alright, let's take a look at solving ratios part 2. So we're going to solve some more questions pretty much like what we were just doing, except there's going to be a little bit of a difference to it, and you're going to find that it's very easy. So let's take a look right away. Let's solve for x in this question here. Solve for x. 8 equals x over 5. So you may think at first glance that this question is different than the kinds of questions we were just doing, right? First of all, what is the answer for this? Like, when you look at this, you should say to yourself, what divided by 5 gives me 8? Well, that's pretty easy. It's 40, right? 40 divided by 5 is 8. So we know the answer is 40. But like I mentioned on the last section of solving ratios, we want a technique that's always going to work for us to solve ratios. We don't want to use some tricks or methods that aren't going to work all the time. Okay, so how do we handle something like this? Let me just erase this here a little bit, make it look better. The way we handle an equation like this is to do a little trick called putting it over 1. So the 8 here, I'm going to rewrite it as 8 over 1. And you know, we're allowed to do that because this fraction line, it means division, right? And 8 divided by 1 is the same as 8. So by putting this over 1, I really have not changed the question at all, because 8 is the same as 8 over 1. And now that I did that, I bet you see that it's exactly like the problems we just did, right? We have two crosses, this cross and this cross. On this cross we have two numbers. On this cross we have a number and a letter. So just like we learned last time, the answer x here is going to be 8 times 5 divided by 1. And, you know, dividing by 1 doesn't do anything, so really x here is just 8 times 5. And 8 times 5 is 40. We don't have to show our work, but since we're just learning still, I'm going to. So it's 5 times 8 divided by 1. And so x is 40. Now, you know, dividing by 1, that's something we can kind of admit, right? Omit. So we can just say x is really just 8 times 5, okay? Now, let's take a look at another question. I'll just write it over here. What about 3 equals 15 over x? Now, I'm sure you could answer this in your head. 15 divided by what gives us 3? Well, the answer is 5, right? 15 divided by 5 is 3. But let's try to do this another way so that when we have like decimals here or larger numbers where we can't do the question in our head, we'll still have a technique to use to find the answer. Well, the technique I'm teaching you here is just to put this over 1. And then we have a fraction equals another fraction, and that's exactly the type of question that we handled in the last lecture. When we look at the two crosses here, on this cross we have both numbers, right? So we're going to multiply these two and then divide by the other one. So x is 15 times 1 divided by 3. And timesing 1 doesn't change anything, right? So 15 times 1 is just 15. And 15 divided by 3 is 5. Like we said. Okay. So in this one, the dividing by 1 was kind of unnecessary. Here, the multiplying by 1 was kind of unnecessary. Here, x is just 15 divided by 3. Here, x is 8 times 5. Great. So all I'm trying to say is, on these problems that may initially look a little different, all you have to do is put them over 1, and then it's going to be exactly the same as before. So let's continue on and do a couple more problems here. Let's take a look at this problem now. X over 40.3 equals 1.27. Now on this one, I would like it if we don't have to write over 1. Okay, since it's kind of unnecessary, let's just do it like kind of light, okay, dotted maybe or something. But I'm eventually going to stop writing that, okay? Yeah. But since we're learning, it's okay if we do it now, but later on, especially on the worksheet, I would like to stop writing it. Because, you know, dividing by 1 or multiplying by 1, it doesn't change anything, does it? So, after I write that over 1 there, we see the two crosses, don't we? And we see on this cross is where both numbers are. So I'm going to be multiplying those two numbers and then dividing by the other one, the 1. And since dividing by 1 here doesn't do anything, it would be nice if you could just see the original question and just say, oh, okay, well, x is this times that, 40.3 times 1.27. And don't bother saying divided by 1, because it doesn't change anything. So if we could just go right to the answer, we'd say 40.3 multiplied by 1.27. Those are the two numbers on the cross, and then divided by 1. So all over 1. But I'm not going to bother writing that because it doesn't change anything. If you want to, you can, though. Nothing wrong with that. So here I'm going to go to my calculator. 40.3 multiplied by 1.27. And I get my answer 51.181. Okay. Let's try another little example here. This time I'm not going to write over 1, okay? I'm going to, you know, it's just fine to think it in your head. But let's not write it. How about something like this? 800 over x equals, I don't know, 0.256. Okay, now if I was to write over 1, I'd do it here, wouldn't I? I'd write I'd write a fraction line here and then 1. So it'd be over 1. And then I'd see my two crosses. Here's a cross with 800 here and 1 down there. It's not written, but just pretend. And the other cross is this one. Here's the x and here's the number. So what do? I take the number with both crosses, that's right here, and I multiply them. So I go 800 times 1 divided by this one, 0.256. But multiplying by 1 doesn't do anything. So really, the answer here is just 800 divided by 0.256. And that's kind of where I'd like you to understand things, is you could just write this down right away without having to write the over 1 or times 1. So when you see this equation, you just say, oh, okay, well, the x is going to be this divided by that, right? And up here on this one, you just say, oh, x is this times that. You see on this one, the order of multiplication doesn't matter, right? If you want to say 40.3 times 1.27, that's fine. But if you want to go the other way and say 1.27 times 40.3, that's fine too. But here, the order really does matter, because the right answer is 800 divided by 0.256. If you did it the other way, 0.256 divided by 800, that'd be wrong. So on this style here, the order really does matter. And to finish this problem, let's go to the calculator and see what is 800 divided by 0.256. It is 3,125. So that's my answer for this one. And here's my answer for this one. So what I'm trying to get across here is that putting the over 1 to make it look like the questions we did before is not really necessary. If you want to do it as a crutch, that's just fine, go ahead. But if you want to be as professional as possible, try to just put it over 1 in your mind and then figure out what the right way to do it is. And on this step here where you show your work, don't put times 1 or don't put over 1 or nothing, because it doesn't change anything, so let's not bother writing it. Okay, let me just review this quickly before I set you off to do the worksheets. Alright, let's summarize the types of problems we just looked at. Let's say we have x over some number equals to some number, okay? In this style of question, I put this over 1. Okay, let's just do it in our minds. And then I say, well, this is the cross with both numbers, so I'm going to multiply these two, this times this, and then divide by 1. But since dividing by 1 doesn't do anything, I know the answer for this question is just take this one and multiply it by this one. Or vice versa, it doesn't matter. What if I had a question like this? Some number over x equals some other number. Well, I'd put this over 1 in my mind, and then I would see this is the cross here with both numbers, right? I have some number here and I have a 1 down there. So I'm going to say multiply these two and then divide by this number. But multiplying this number by 1 doesn't change it, does it? So really x here is just this divided by that. And the order matters. Definitely you don't want to go this one divided by that one. That'd be wrong. X here is this guy divided by that one. Now how about a situation like this? A number equals x over another number. Well, in this one, I'd put this over 1 in my mind, and I'd say x is this times that divided by 1. But since dividing by 1 doesn't do anything, I just say x is this number times this number. And then the last scenario, I guess, would look like this. A number equals some number over x. So in this one, I'd put this over 1 right here. And I'd say this is the cross with both numbers then. And I'd say x is this number times 1 divided by this number. But timesing by 1 doesn't do anything. So really x is just this number divided by that one. I think these two here are a little bit more tricky, okay? Because you know on these two up here, it's multiplication, right? So it doesn't matter the order. X is this times this, or x is this times this. It doesn't matter. But on this one, these ones turn out to be division, don't they? X here is this divided by that. And if for some reason you get confused and you go the wrong way, then you're going to get a wrong answer. So if this is confusing for you, just put over 1, no problem. You can put over 1, and then you know x is this times 1 divided by that. And you can write times 1 if you're showing your work or whatever, that's fine. But I'm just trying to get you to see that it's really not that hard to not bother writing over 1 and just go right to your answer. X is this divided by that. End of story. All right, good enough. So let's try some problems now on this yourself, and you'll see if you understand it or not.